Welcome back to the Modern Woodcarver podcast. I'm your host, Michael. Today we're sitting down with Dan Gallagher, the creator behind Goofballs by Dan. Dan is an accomplished woodcarver, but what he's probably most known for is his incredibly creative work carving golf balls, something he's playfully dubbed goofballs. He's taken something as simple as a golf ball and turned it into these really fun, expressive characters that a lot of people in the carving community instantly recognize. Today, we're going to talk about how Dan got started in his wood carving, how the goofballs idea came about, and a little bit about his journey as a maker. So, with that said, I'm excited to welcome to the show Dan Gallagher. Dan, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. I'm glad to have this opportunity to be able to share a little bit about the wackiness behind my creations, as well as how I got started and everything.
Of course, yeah. I mean, your stuff is really incredible. You know, I I'm equally impressed by both the wood carving and the golf ball carvings.
Well, I'm going to
You
throw
know,
one more medium in there.
are you?
I
What do you got
started
planned?
I started with soap carving. So
Okay.
when I was in grade school, in third grade, we had this project where we studied the different states in the United States, and so we had to showcase what we learned about the different states. And there was like a list of different things you could choose from. And one of the items on that list was to carve a native animal to your state out of a bar of soap. Well, my dad did wood carving as a hobby. And when he saw that that was one of my assignments, he said, "That sounds great. This is a great way to get you started. We'll learn on a bar of soap." He carved one, I carved one, and we used a sharpened popsicle stick, and that's how he showed me the different ways to cut. And so he would make a couple cuts on his bar of soap, and then I would do it on mine. And thankfully, we were smart about it ahead of time. My mom was taking pictures along the way, because afterwards, when I turned it in, the teacher didn't really think it was my work. She honestly
Wow.
thought that my parents did it. But thankfully, with the photos, we were able to show that no, I got the gene passed down from my dad, and I did carving. So I actually still have that first carving. And
Oh, no
so
way.
this is a bar of ivory soap, and I did a polar
Wow.
bear because my state was Alaska. And in studying the polar bear, we found out that they will sit for hours on day looking at a hole in the ice, waiting for a seal to pop up, and then it would swipe its paw at them. Now,
Wow.
this is over 30 years old, and it has aged this yellowish brown color from being exposed to air and light. It used to be solid white bar of soap. There's still a little bit of white on the underside where it's not really that exposed because of sitting on the base. But that's how I
Wow.
got started with carving, was a bar of ivory soap. So
That's incredible.
whenever I do demonstrations, one of the demonstrations I do is I make an interactive carving a bar of soap. And so I ask, the kids or the adults that are there, if any of them want to come up, grab a bar of soap. I have some sharpened popsicle sticks, and we learn the basic cuts to kind of get them interested in carving.
That's really amazing. Yeah, I'm impressed on so many levels here. For one, the fact that that carving is 30 years old and it's made of soap is pretty insane. And it looks amazing for a first carving, first attempt. I would never
Well,
have assumed.
I think what really made the difference was the fact that, I had someone right next to me on a bar of soap themselves
Yeah,
doing the same cuts. And he would only do like two or three cuts, and then I would then do two or three cuts. And so he's there watching and making sure that I'm holding the knife the right way, and that I'm making sure that I'm not going too deep, or just kind of scraping the top and just getting kind of like soap dust.
interesting. Yeah, that's really cool. I think a lot of us that got into the craft, I mean, me in particular, I didn't have someone hands on show me how to do it. It's something I
Mhm.
just wanted to do. I picked it up and either YouTube videos or books and things like that. So, having that mentor figure to really walk you through things must have been a huge advantage.
It
Um,
was. Carving with the soap, uh, once I learned those cuts and he felt comfortable enough, I could then graduate up to using a sharp knife, having a thumb guard, learning how to sharpen a knife. We learned that with the popsicle stick because over time,
yeah.
as you're carving with a popsicle stick, soap residue builds up. We would take a piece of sandpaper and go through the same motions of how you would sharpen a knife
Wow.
with the popsicle stick. So kind of using
Interesting.
that as kind of the springboard to get me interested in carving and to get me comfortable with how to carve. Um, and then what happened was, as he likes to tell people, life got in the way for him. He had a career. He was a firefighter. My parents owned a second store, a Rita's water ice store, and they had that as like on the side as well. So he was constantly busy. And when I would get home from school, I would be able to start carving. And it got to the point that I started producing more carvings than he did, and there became a time where I then started showing him things that I was learning along the way. And so it was kind of a nice way of going from being the mentor mentee to now being almost like colleagues learning from each other.
That's amazing. And what a tremendous bonding experience that must have been starting at a young age to, I'm sure, adulthood. And is your father still with you? Is he still around?
Yes, yes. Unfortunately,
Oh,
he
awesome.
moved out to Western Pennsylvania, so we
Okay.
don't see each other that often. But he has stepped a little away from carving. He now does he goes and gets found wood and driftwood, and he cuts them on the bandsaw and sands them in certain ways to kind of make crosses. So that's
Okay.
kind of
That's
how he's still involved with wood and the hobby and the craft and all that. But the carving aspect of it, not as much.
sure. No, that's amazing though. You have that same type of craft mentality hobby um together is just really nice. I have a young daughter. She's 6 years old, and she sees me carving all the time, and she wants to carve because she sees me doing it. But I'm
Mhm.
not going to hand her a knife, you know. But I
Yeah.
think that's a really great idea. I know beginners tend to start with soap carving, and I've always heard like a butter knife. Um,
Mm.
but the popsicle stick is a really, really great idea, and I think that's something even at her age now,
So
I feel like
we
can
had a belt sander. And so we just kind of hit both sides of the popsicle stick on the belt sander to kind of give it that beveled
give it that
edge
edge.
to make it a popsicle stick knife. And then we took medical tape and we wrapped that around the base to kind of give it more of a handle, because over time your hand's going to
Yeah.
get covered with soap. So you need something
Yeah.
a little bit more to kind of stick to. But then the neatest trick of all was we took the medical tape, and we took two long pieces off. The first piece we would wrap around our thumb, sticky side out. And then the
Okay.
second piece we would wrap around our thumb, sticky side down. And now we had kind of like a thumb guard out of medical tape. So even though I'm not going to get cut with a popsicle stick knife, he wanted me to start learning what it was like to have protective gear on my thumb as I'm carving to get ready for when I had a leather thumb guard and I would have a sharp knife for wood carving.
Really cool. Yeah, very creative. Dad's a smart guy.
Well, being a firefighter and a paramedic, he wanted to make sure safety was at the forefront.
I think that's amazing. I mean, I've in my area, I've taught a few workshops on beginner how to carve sessions, and I would bring the tape and the gloves and people that had zero knife experience, and it was actually pretty scary as like an instructor
Hmm.
to teach someone how to not hurt themselves. And thankfully, there were a few nicks here and there, but they
Hmm.
weren't serious. They were just little pokes and little nicks. But
And
I could
that,
easily see something being
mhm,
disastrous. But I was
yeah.
on top of everyone, and it was a very small condensed workshop, only like 3 to 5 people, maybe max.
Mm.
So I was able to give everyone each individual attention and make sure. Um, and I kind of did what your father did, like, okay, we're gonna start. with this cut and that cut.
Mhm.
Let me know when you catch up. We'll move on to the next.
And
So
it's actually interesting you brought that up because that leads probably to the next phase of carving for me. Um, I figured out what I wanted to do for a career thanks to wood carving. I was
good.
in the Boy Scouts growing up, and when I became old enough, when I hit the age of 14, I could start working at summer camps. And so I went off to a Boy Scout summer camp called Treasure Island Scout Reservation. It was a literal island in the middle of the Delaware River. And I was the only one on staff that knew anything about wood carving. So I immediately
Okay.
got wood carving merit badge. And so I would
Awesome.
start teaching merit badge classes of 25 to 30 kids at a time, just like you said, varying ability and knowledge of a knife, how to wood carve. And I figured, if they're not cutting me and they're not really getting badly cut, maybe teaching is something that I was good at. And I then started to pursue that as my career path was to go into education and become a teacher. Um, so I kind of attribute that to wood carving.
Really cool. Really cool. What subject do you teach?
So actually, I'm no longer a teacher. I'm a supervisor now for instructional technology for a school
Gotcha.
district. So I work in a K-12 school district and kind of working with the teachers on how they can use technology. And but when I first started out teaching, I was a fourth grade elementary teacher. I became a middle school teacher. I taught computer classes at the elementary and middle school level. I did a little bit of post grad teaching, teaching teachers how to use technology. And now I'm a supervisor.
Really cool. That's awesome. And I see you also do wood carving teaching as well here and there. You do
Here and there.
demonstrations or
Especially because growing up, my dad was also involved in a wood carving club. We were members of the Delaware Valley Woodcarvers, which, as a young child, 11, 12 years old, and you're the youngest person there in the room by like 30 years, it
yeah.
was intimidating. Um, but it was a great way of finding out what I was interested in carving. We had members in the club that strictly did bird carvings, and we had members that did character carvings. And, being able to have a chance to see other people's work, talk to them about what they do, how they do that craft, I kind of learned from them. Had the confidence boost of being able to display my carvings at the annual show that we would do and have people come up and a lot of times going, oh, your dad carved these? No, actually, this table's my work, and that table's
Yeah.
my dad's, and it kind of gave me a chance to feel appreciation of the skill of wood carving.
Really cool. Really cool. Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of your work on Instagram, and I really love the realistic, like I guess it's cottonwood bark you carved them out of,
Oh
like the
yes,
the mountain men and the bearded guys and all that. You even had a few female faces, um,
they're
which
tough. They're tough.
I've I really want to get into that world
Hmm.
a little bit, but it's really hard to you know
Hmm.
keep
So
them feminine.
I've had some fortunate times where I've had some classes with some different instructors. Um, my personal favorite that I was able to go out to his studio and learn from was Alec LaClasse, and
Yes. Yeah.
I was able to do in cottonwood bark, human face. Well, I can't say human face because I wanted to challenge myself when I went there. I
Mhm.
did a Native American before, I did a mountain man before, and I said, I really want to take this opportunity of learning firsthand and push myself. And so I'm a fan of Star Trek. And so actually
Okay.
I have this carving beside me. I did a character from Star Trek, Worf, who's a
I
Klingon,
saw that one. Yeah.
and Klingons are known for having the ridges in their forehead and the kind of wrinkled up nose. And so I really wanted to kind of focus in on that. And he kind of has like a goatee and usually long hair. I kind of wanted to have that kind of going behind his back, and he wears
Yeah.
this like metal sash and has his communicator pin. And so I was able to carve that, and this is probably right now my favorite piece out of everything I've done because I really it was interesting. Like it's a 3-day class. And so the first day was a lot of instruction from Alec on, proportions and laying out your face and um a lot of biology going into muscle structure and everything that's involved with that. And then day 2, you start working on roughing it out and kind of setting everything in place. And at the end of day 2, I was looking at my piece and I'm like, I'm just not getting it. It
Mm.
looks like a mask. It's flat. It looks like a mask. I'm not there. And that night I had to tell myself, I have to really listen to what Alec was saying was you really have to push everything back into the wood to give it depth. You're not working on that surface level. You really have to hack away at the wood and get everything pushed back. And so that next day, that's what I did right off the bat. And I had another guy beside me and he was going, I didn't think you were going to have an actual face. Like I thought you were going to have like a mask. He
Mm.
was so surprised that I actually that next day I really applied myself, took a lot of cottonwood bark back, really had to reposition all the features to kind of set everything so it had that depth and it looked more like a face and not just a mask.
Very cool. Yeah, I Alec uh is a great resource. His YouTube
Mhm.
videos are fantastic. His book is amazing. I learned a
Yes.
ton of valuable information. And for the people that don't like to read or read the instructions, a lot of his stuff is from the book is on his YouTube, I believe.
Mhm.
But yeah, I learned a ton of valuable information just from watching him and reading his book. And I would love to one day be able to do a workshop with him at some point. Um, I feel like having that hands-on experience with someone
Mhm.
to kind of guide you a little bit would really improve your skill tenfold.
Mhm.
Because sometimes all it takes is just a little bit of nugget of information and someone showing you what to do
Mhm.
specifically to what you're working on, and it just clicks in your mind, and there's no stopping you from there. But
Yeah.
I like that he has a very artistic mindset when it comes to the carvings because he's more of a sculpture artist rather than
I would
like a
agree.
wood carver.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would
Um,
agree.
yeah.
He was his biggest critique of mine. He likes to make sure that everything doesn't look like it's just staring at you. He kind of likes to have heads like
Yeah, off
off
to the
kilter a
side
little bit
and
or kind of, in a different position to kind of add more depth and movement to the
yeah.
piece. And I thought that wouldn't look like a Klingon. A Klingon is going to be looking straight at you, staring
Yeah.
you down. And if I turned the head, I thought I would be doing the character wrong.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess given the specific character, but yeah, I can definitely see where Alec is coming from when it comes to having things off side and
Hmm.
turned and gives it a more dynamic, realistic feel. I think a lot of us get hung up on these little character carvings that we do. And
Hmm.
you're starting from a square block, so everything's kind of just remains square and blocky. And you want
Hmm.
things to be perfect and you're really working on the symmetry. But when you get into the more realistic form, not every, realism, people's faces are droopy, their nose is crooked, or their heads off to the side. So I definitely can see where he's coming from that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um,
Yeah.
but as you were saying, like the standard block, that's a great way to start learning because
Yes.
you need to know those proportions to be able to then start looking at how do I lay out a face? Well, I know from the chin to the top of the head, the eyes are going to be about halfway down. And so
Yeah.
knowing out how to lay that out is all about those proportions. And you need to have that basic foundation to start from.
Yeah. Especially as a beginner, the fundamentals of the craft are so important. Um,
Mhm,
just just getting those down packed first, holding the knife proper way, cutting the proper way, and just getting familiar with the material and the tools and everything. Get that down first before you move on to these complex pieces. I think a lot of people see something they really like a dragon or something way over the top for their first
mhm,
carving. And some people can achieve it, I think, with patience and, maybe they're taking minimal cuts, but you're doing yourself a huge disservice. I think get down the fundamentals and
mhm.
figure that out and then elevate yourself that way.
And then the practice, just making sure you keep up with it.
Of
Which
course.
actually, your opening talked about, what I'm probably more known for. The way that came about was I was in my senior year of high school and I got up at one of our monthly carving meetings. And I basically said to everyone, I said, look, I'm going off to college next year. I want to be able to continue to carve, but to bring all of that to a dorm room, that's just too much. It's too much equipment,
It's a
too
lot.
many pieces of wood. Like I need something that will still keep me active carving. And so someone came up to me after that meeting and he goes, you can carve a golf ball. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah. The hardest part is getting the cap off. But once you get the cap off, the inside, if you have a more modern golf ball, and I'll get to that in a second, but the inside material is very similar to basswood. It carves very much like basswood, except there is no
Interesting.
grain. So you can carve in any direction
And you
and not have to worry about splitting. And it's not going to
Interesting.
dull your tools any more than if you were carving basswood. So I was like, all right, I just need a couple of tools. Uh, I need some golf balls. And then I had to come up with how I was going to take the cap off. But I said, the modern golf ball, because every now and then I still get one of the old golf balls that are rubber band cores.
Okay.
And they are a mess. As soon as you
Yeah.
start getting that cap off, you start hearing these rubber bands snap. I have to throw it into a bag because if that does go, it explodes everywhere. And there's just
Wow.
so many rubber bands wound so tightly inside, it makes a huge mess.
I've seen it before in Wood Carving Illustrated. And to me, the inside and looking at your work, the inside of the golf ball looks almost similar to like the lino cut blocks that people make the block
Mm,
printing and the stamps. So
okay.
I was kind of wondering if it was that same kind of
It's not as
material.
soft. It's
It's
not as
not as
soft. It's
soft.
kind of
Okay.
like a
Because it looks really soft.
what someone explained to me once before. It's kind of like a polyurethane resin inside that
Okay.
it works for carving a knife, but it's not too soft that like it's going to get impressioned as you're carving, if that makes
Gotcha.
sense.
Yeah.
So actually I have one here. So this is probably one of my favorite ones I did. I like to do wacky designs in mine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I love
so
those.
my style is I, I personally believe all I need to do are the eyes and the mouth. I can
Okay.
get all of the expression across to whoever's looking at my golf balls through the eyes, the way the eyelids are, angled, the way the eyebrows are angled, and the way the mouth is will instantly tell you what expression I was going for. A nose does absolutely nothing for my
Hmm.
characters because of the way I cut the golf ball. There's not going to be any ears. I hardly ever do hair. So for this one, I wanted to challenge myself, and instead of carving the eyes, I wanted to have Oakley glasses. I got the little O there,
Yeah. A
and I
little
wanted a
emblem.
backwards cap on. And I'm a fan of NFL football, so I kind of did like the NFL symbol up there, and just kind of gave that expression to kind of let someone know, hey, this person's excited for football.
That's really
Um,
cool.
but yeah,
Yeah, they're all so expressive. Every single one of them you have is
thank you.
these incredible animated features to them, and they almost look like a hand drawn cartoon sketch.
That's
Each
kind
one
of
of
what I'm
them.
going for. I'm kind of going for
Yeah,
that.
you're achieving
I
that.
I I don't worry so much about are the eyes completely symmetrical? Because it is a character. So if one eye's a little bit bigger than the other, that's exactly what I was going for. Even
Yeah, I
though
kind of
when I first
like that.
draw it on, my pattern, I try to have them symmetrical, but through carving, if one eye gets a little bit bigger than the other, oh well. And the nice
Yeah.
thing is, I have no idea what color the inside's going to be until I take
I was
that
gonna
cap
ask
off.
about that too. If there's this particular brands might have particular
No,
colors on the inside.
I've most of my golf balls are given to me from various family and friends who find
Yeah.
them, and I have an uncle-in-law who's on the back of a golf course, and he just gives me a bucket of balls every year of just what he takes out of his backyard. But every now and
Awesome.
then, I do get gifted a box, a 3-pack. And what's interesting is I'll open up all three, and all three will be different colors.
Wow.
So even in a
That's
single
kind of
box, there's still that variety. Um, what I also like to do is whatever that color inside is, that's typically going to be my skin tone color, unless I'm doing some type of character that requires it to be painted. Um, and I usually only focus on painting the eyes and the teeth. So I typically carve about 8 to 10 at a time, and then I'll paint them in that batch because I'm just using a little bit of acrylic paint for the eyes and the teeth, unless it is something a little more involved.
yeah, interesting. Is there a particular brand of golf ball that you prefer? I mean, I don't know much about golf. The only brand I know is Titleist. That's it.
I I've only played golf once. My brother-in-law took me out once. I've definitely gone to the driving range and did a bucket of balls that way, but uh, I prefer cutting them open and doing a wacky face in them. Typically for me, I find that Top Flight has been the best one for ease of getting the cap off and carving the inside. Because some of them are, a little more dense of a material, so they're a little more harder to carve, and some of them are a little more soft on the inside, and so my knife can easily go through it almost like butter. Um,
Mm,
so I like Top Flight, Titleist is good, Callaway is good, Nike is good. Um, but Titleist I have to be careful of because if it does look like an old ball, those have been the ones that had the rubber band cores that I've come across in my time.
mm, interesting. And how do you take the caps off, or how do you cut them in half?
So the method I found to work best for me is I use a PVC pipe cutter. And so they sell these attachments for golf balls at like you can get them at Walmart, you can get them at Dick's. They draw on center lines. So I usually clip that onto a golf ball, take a dry erase pen and draw my center line around the outside. And then I take that attachment off and I go around with the PVC pipe cutter, just kind of scoring the outside. And then I'll take a flathead screwdriver and pop it off.
Oh,
I've
okay.
I've done before because I've done some crazy golf balls where it's like Marvin the Martian, and so I'm turning the cap into his helmet, and
Okay.
so I've had to use a roofing nail and a Dremel. Um, you go medium speed because what it starts to do is it starts to melt the plastic. And every now and
Yeah.
then you have to stop and kind of like scrape the plastic off the nail because if you do go fast and you don't stop, you're getting shards of hot plastic shot back up at you because eventually they kind of start to spin around and stretch out in that spin and then they go
Right.
flying off.
Okay. Well, yeah. That's yeah. You don't want a piece of hot plastic in your eye.
hmm Um, I've had some people say after you score the outside, they'll wrap it in a damp paper towel and put it in the microwave for a couple of seconds. And I guess because of the heat and the moisture in the paper towel, it kind of gets inside the golf ball and it pops off. I've never
Okay.
tried that because I'm a little leery of putting that because there are
Yeah.
some golf balls also that have a liquid core. So I have to be careful when carving sometimes. I don't want to go too deep into the golf ball and hit that liquid core. I one
What kind
time
of liquid is it?
it it's awful. It's like this black tar liquid that just stinks to high heavens and stains
Weird.
your clothes. I don't know what it is inside, but it has this liquid in there. I was once doing one as like a bolo, and so I had the face all carved. I went to drill in 2 holes to put the lanyard through, and this had a liquid core, and it stained my pants. It stunk up my workbench, and it ruined the carving because the liquid stained the outside, the face area of the golf ball.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so I had to do another carving. Luckily, that one did not have a liquid core, and I was able to make like a neck bolo to kind of wear when I'm doing demonstrations of golf ball carving.
Interesting. Yeah, it's wild to think about. I didn't think there was. I thought it was just crack it open and carve. I didn't think there was rubber bands or liquid or
Yeah,
the color
a
issues.
lot of interesting things I've learned along the way
Yeah,
there with those.
very
Once I take the
interesting.
cap off, the first thing I do is I usually get my roughing knife and I kind of rough out the outside because you still have that glue residue. And I
Okay.
find that when I try to start drawing on center lines and kind of drawing where my eyes are going to be, I usually do that with like a black ink pen. But if that glue residue is on there, all that ink smears.
Ugh.
So I kind of rough it up to get that glue residue off, then draw my center lines where my eyes are going to be, where the mouth is going to be. And then I have 2 different miniaturized detail knives that I use to start carving onto it. So all in all, it's 3 knives, and I use 2 different sized V gouges. They're both micro gouges from Dockyard Tools, but one is, I don't know, zero point 0.5, and I think that one's like zero point 0.3.
Huh.
And that's all I use at the end when I do the wrinkles and I do the lines for the teeth. I use the V gouges.
Oh, very cool. And what's your go-to knife?
So I have one Helvy, and I have a knife that I found a gentleman on Instagram. He's from Norway, and he does really nice miniature blades. I forget his name, but I ordered one from him, and those 2 are my go-to knives for carving the details in. Um, my roughing knife, I forget where I got that from. It was another person I met on Instagram. They do like box elder handles, and they have these really nice big blades that I'm blanking on the name of the process, but it's when you like fold the metal over multiple times when you're making your blade. It's
Okay.
got
Like
that effect to
Damascus?
it. Yes, it's got that
Okay.
effect to his blades.
Oh, really
But it's just
cool.
a nice size, great handhold grip to it, and I can just go right around and kind of rough it up.
Really cool. I would imagine the smaller blades are probably pretty helpful because you're working
Yes.
on a surface area that's only what, an inch?
Um,
Once you crack the
I think
ball open,
it's
it's
I think it's like an inch and a half all around.
okay.
But I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a lot there, and then, it's nice to have those little projects, get those
Yeah.
wins under your belt. You feel successful, but also like when I'm doing a bigger carving, and it's going to be it's hard to get carving, with work in the way and family life and everything else that comes along.
Yeah.
A larger carving is going to be over a couple months span. It's good to take a
Yeah.
break from it, do a small project that you can complete, refresh the mind. You go back to that bigger piece. You're looking at it with fresh eyes, and it kind of helps you make sure that you're not losing focus on what your design and outcome you're hoping to get.
Yeah. I can definitely agree with that. I mean, I've worked on some larger projects that take quite a bit of time.
Mhm.
And you tend to get a little discouraged. You're not finishing or it's taking too long. And when you have a little small one by one block and you bang something out real quick, you feel accomplished. You give yourself that sense of,
Mhm.
you know,
And I find it helpful. I know you've mentioned in a previous episode, like you get to that point where you start hating the piece because it's not looking the way you want it to look. That's the perfect time to stop, go away, go do a small project, and then come back to it. And that's when you'll start seeing those things that you couldn't see before. It was almost like they were camouflaged before, but now you're looking at it with a new lens,
Yep.
and you're able to see those areas of, oh, this is what I need to go and fix and touch up. That's really going
Yeah.
to bring that piece
Yeah.
to
Sometimes
completion.
sometimes you're just too close to the project as a carver or a maker. You're it's under a microscope for so long. You're just
Hmm.
analyzing every detail, every aspect of it, and it just becomes kind of overwhelming at a point.
Hmm.
And when it's in that stage, that ugly stage where you can't stand it, it's nothing seems to look right. I think you built up so much pressure on the one piece or the one project, so it is nice to just break away from that. I have a bucket of car. I call it my reject bucket, where either they're unfinished or
Hmm.
something snapped off and it didn't want it to, or
I
something's just
have a
bothering me about the piece.
I have the
But
same thing. I have a shelf on my bench that's same
yeah,
thing.
I'll eventually, months, even a year or two down the line, when I'm looking through that bucket, I'll say, hey, this is pretty cool. I'll look at it for a little bit and then I'll just start whittling away and I finish the piece and it looks
Hmm.
great when I do. Not always, but it is nice to just kind of see where you last left off, and you're at a different skill set too a year down the line. You have
Of
more
course.
tips and
Hmm.
techniques and better tools. Your tools are sharper, whatever the case is. Yeah, so there's been a number of those rejects that have made it to some of my favorite pieces.
Hmm.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you about the golf balls is how do you hold them and carve it? Because that's got
Honestly,
to be,
I I hold it in my hand and I carve with the other hand, and it's
yeah.
just I got used to holding it tightly in my left hand almost.
Do you
There
wrap
was one point in
the
time.
shell at all? Because golf balls are kind of slippery.
Um, the if I'm wearing a carving glove, yes, they
Okay.
they they slip and slide in that. But when it's just in my hand, it's not that slippery, thankfully.
Hmm.
And especially since the material is a lot like basswood, it's not like I'm carving a harder wood, where I
Yeah.
have to put a little more effort into it, where it could then start to rotate on me. I don't seem to have that issue. There was a point in time. I was at a carving show many years ago. I started doing golf balls back in 2000. So, early 2000s, I was showing at a carving show, and a gentleman walked over and said he was a representative from a company called Jerry Rig. And he's looking at me carving a golf ball because I'd like to sit at the table and carve so that people actually see, oh, yes, this is actually something that we do. It's not like,
Yeah.
we're using big machinery at home and, CNC is producing this. No, this is us hand carving. So I'll typically do a couple golf balls at a show. And so he comes over and he's watching me and he goes, you know, I work for this company where we make different jigs and I think we could do something with a golf ball. And he gave me
Hmm.
his business card and, I reached back out a couple months later thinking, all right, maybe let's see what we can do. Unfortunately, the company, I think the founder passed away and they weren't really
Mm.
making um, the jigs anymore. But I have seen some people who build their own. They kind of take two pieces of like 2x4 and they kind of hollow out. They put them together. They kind of hollow out the diameter of a golf ball, and then they'll put like a I don't know, like a hinge at the bottom, and will kind of build their own stick that they can hold the golf ball in and hinge it
Oh, cool.
closed up at the top. And it works for them. I think I've gotten to the point now I'm so used to holding it in my hand that
Yeah.
having to hold it a different way just wouldn't feel natural. And I think would take some iteration to get used to, multiple golf ball carvings before I would start getting comfortable holding it a different way.
Yeah, I'd love to give a golf ball a try. I think splitting it open would be the hardest thing.
It is
I am
that
for some reason I immediately thought bandsaw, and I know that's ridiculous because you don't want to cut through it,
well,
but
again, going back to that idea of what some people have created their own rigs to hold it, I bet if you played with it, you could create one that, you're using the bandsaw just to kind of score the outside a little bit. You just have to be a little
yeah,
more careful. Um,
yeah.
but honestly, what I do with fellow carvers, and I'm going to make the same offer to you. When I've had a carver reach out to me saying, "Oh, I'm interested in doing a golf ball," I've got so many that I have pre-cut. I've already carved the glue off of. I already have the center lines drawn. I just give them one. So
Oh, interesting.
I'm gonna mail you one,
Oh, thanks. I'd
so that you
appreciate
have
that.
one.
Yeah,
You got past the first step, and then you can carve
yeah,
whatever you want into it. Um,
yeah. That's
I
really
do
cool.
that because back in 2000, I actually got a lot of strange looks from wood carvers. It was the weirdest part of, they thought I wasn't a part of the club.
Yeah,
Oh,
I could see
I
that.
do
The
wood
the
carvings.
purists.
Here you are with a golf ball. And what was interesting is I really had to make sure, like when I was at a show or something, that I made sure I had not just the golf balls, but also my wood carvings. So that I could
Yeah,
kind of, build up my reputation of, yes, I actually still do wood carvings, but these are fun little projects too. And I
yeah.
started to notice maybe 5 or 6 years into doing golf balls, the mindset started to change and more people became open to the idea of golf ball carving is still carving. Whether
Yeah.
it's wood, whether it's a golf ball, whether it's soap, it's still carving. And a lot of people then started embracing it and wanted to give it a try for themselves.
It's funny that you mentioned that is I'm doing this podcast and it's revolves around wood carving. And I love wood carving and I love the hobby, but I personally don't want it to be mainlined as just wood as the medium. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
feel like there's so many talented people out there, and carving is carving, whether it's wood, it's soap, or epoxy, or
Hmm.
chainsaw, or whatever your medium is. I I kind of want to explore all of the makers within this realm of carving. Um, it's just so happens to be wood is the predominant
Hmm.
material to be carved, but there's so many other mediums out there that behave differently but require the same
Hmm.
set of tools and the same skill set, and even some different skill sets because
Hmm.
a golf ball behaves differently from wood. You said there's no grain in it, so you can carve it
Hmm.
upside down any which way possible. Epoxy also has no grain. I don't
Hmm.
think you can carve it with a knife. You might need a Dremel, but and then
I mean,
what
my
other then there's clay and other mediums as well.
my dad has started showing my sister's kids, so my niece and nephew, soapstone,
Yeah,
which is another material. You're not using knives, you're using files, but
yeah.
you're still removing material to get to that finished piece. As my dad always said, it was what was always in there. You just had to move everything else out of the way.
You just have to bring it out. Yeah,
And you
and
mentioned one that's on my bucket list. One day I want to learn how to chainsaw carving.
yeah,
Um,
that would be
Issue
cool.
with
I would
that
love
is
to
though
try it, but
it is expensive because you need multiple chainsaws. Um, but yes, that is on my bucket list to one day to do a chainsaw carving.
yeah, I would like to do it. I'm unfortunately not in an environment where wielding a chainsaw is probably,
I honestly believe
best.
that is definitely one of those types of carving where you need to have an instructor with you. You need to
Yeah,
be with someone who's experienced to kind of guide you through that. Um,
yeah,
I don't
yeah, I
think
could
I
see
could
that.
just pick one up and start doing that on my own.
Plunging away internally, and yeah, I
Hmm.
could see that being problematic real fast. I know some of the bigger sculpture artists out there on YouTube and stuff, they use a chainsaw to mainly just cut to their reference lines,
Hmm.
to cut all the excess material out. I think I could manage that, but anything where like you're putting in the details and they're holding
Hmm.
the chainsaw different ways, I would kind of not want to try that out. But I would need someone to kind of walk me through that a little bit. Um, but yeah, I would love to bring on a rock carver and some other mediums. I think we can all benefit from learning from someone else's craft.
Of course.
Maybe there's a technique and a style that a rock carver might use that could be applied to wood carving and vice versa.
Hmm.
I feel like
Or
we all have something that we can teach and learn. And yeah, I think it would be really
the
cool.
the the biggest lesson my dad kept telling me over and over again as I learned how to carve, and honestly, I still have yet to listen to it all the time, but his biggest phrase was always less is more. I have a tendency that I like to cut too deep sometimes, and that's where he would then be saying less is more. You don't need to go so far into the material, because sometimes if you go too far, you've taken away stuff that you can't get back unless you're going to
Yeah,
be, cheating with, getting some putty in there, and then you have to make sure you're painting. But like he would always say, less is more. You're taking a smaller cut to be able to save yourself more time later on.
absolutely. Yeah, I can agree with that.
So
I
even
think,
those lessons that they become universal no matter what you're doing, whether it's carving
of
wood,
course,
carving soap, carving stone, those type of phrases, less is more, are always going to be that area where we'll find how that can apply to what we're doing.
I think that's a really valuable mindset to have. And pretty much anything in life is less is more. Just take your time and kind of do things right instead of rushing it. A lot of times in carving, I think we get hung up on wanting to finish a piece
Hmm.
or where you don't see the progress as quickly. And one thing I will say, as amazing as the internet is and having that resource, YouTube and all these carvers, we're looking at videos that are sped up so fast, and
Hmm.
we're seeing some a talented carver in his own right carve something that's easy for him to carve, one, but two, it's sped up to this unrealistic time where they can carve something within a 3-minute video. So
Hmm.
you get this false sense of, oh, I'm nowhere near as fast. So they
You
get
get that
they want to
imposter syndrome.
rush. Yeah, they want to rush. They're
Yes.
taking off big chunks, not realizing that that carver has spent 20, 30 years like yourself knowing how to work the wood and the material and the knife. So they want to take these big rips off. And why
Hmm.
don't my chips look like that? So they start to rush. That's when accidents happen. That's when you
Hmm.
destroy a piece. And yeah, I think it's a little bit of a downfall when it comes to the online aspect.
I
These
I
30-second clips.
I completely agree. Actually, last month, so I'm currently in a wood carving club. I'm the co-president, and so every month we plan different meetings. And so I last month I was doing a golf ball demonstration at my club's meeting, and we had a gentleman who just signed up, just joined the club. He's been carving for a couple of months. He's brought a couple of his pieces out. He's right at where he needs to be stage wise. He is getting the understanding of how to hold the knife, how to do those cuts. He's got some great beginner projects under his belt. So he was sitting down doing a golf ball, and he kept saying, I'm no good at this. I'm no good at this. And I said, you have to stop right there. I've been doing golf ball carving for 20 years now, 20 plus years now. I started in 2000. It's 2026. You're seeing 26 years of my practice. I
Yep.
can't count how many golf balls I've carved.
Yeah.
I've given away a bunch. I've sold some. You're seeing all of that time in what I'm doing.
Yep.
You're not at that point yet. You are
No.
exactly where you need to be. You're going to keep trying this out, and you're going to be amazed when this golf ball's finished. And 5 years from now, you do another golf ball, you're going to be amazed at seeing that difference in your skill level, in your ability, in the ease of carving it. You know, don't get frustrated because you're seeing my 26 years of experience
Of course.
when I'm showing
Yep.
this. And that's kind of what I have to keep telling myself with social media too. I
Yep.
get into these areas and times where the imposter syndrome sits in, and I'm looking at these carvers who, they may have been carving for many years. They may not have been carving that long, but they do it often, more often than I could do with how life
Yep.
is. Um, and so I'm sitting there going, I'm not like that. I must not be a carver. I feel like I'm
Yep.
an imposter. And I have to keep telling myself, no, they're at their spot in life because of how much time they put into the hobby and how much skill and learning they've done along the way, where I might be better carving a golf ball than they might, and they might be better carving a realistic face than I do. It's
Yeah.
just you have to keep reminding yourself you can't compare yourself to everyone else you see.
Yeah. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like everyone is at their own. This is their own personal journey, and
Hmm.
they're exactly where they need to be in the moment. You're where you are in your moment in your 30 years experience. I'm where I am in my own moment in my 7, 8 years experience. And yeah, everyone takes it at their own pace. And it's easy to want to compare yourself to others, especially in the social media realm. We constantly want to show off our work or have
Hmm.
something to prove to someone they admire or someone they dislike. Maybe they want to show that they're better. um yeah, I think it is kind of nice to have that healthy competition when you
Hmm.
see another carver and you're like, hey, I kind of want to do that but a little bit better. It's great mindset. But again, 20 years, 7 years,
Hmm.
or someone with who can carve 5 hours a day versus 1 hour a day, or 10
Hmm.
minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it is. Yeah, but couldn't agree more. And it kind of reminds me when I used to work in a wood shop for many years, and over that time period, we would get new hires who didn't quite they never quite worked in that environment before. So it was pretty new to them what they were doing, whether it was sanding or running a machine and stuff. And they were comparing themselves to me and my colleague who've been doing it for many, many years. And we're fast. It's a
Hmm.
it's a high pressure environment. You're working fast, you're on deadlines. So you're moving rather quickly. And they kind of want to emulate that speed. And I would always tell them, don't stop, take a step
Hmm.
back, work at a very slow pace, your own pace, at whatever that is. If it takes you 5 hours to finish, fine.
Hmm.
The speed will come later. Get
Yes.
get
And
it
you know
down,
what that
get it
speed's going to
right,
come from? Muscle memory.
repetition. Yeah.
At the fact that, I can carve just a normal face. If I'm sitting down, start to finish, I can get a normal face in about an hour, hour and a half. All the details carved in. I'm not considering the painting because actually that's the part that I hate the most. But
Same here.
just carving a face, but it's all because of that muscle memory. I know
Yeah.
where I'm turning, how I'm going, how I'm holding it. When I go in for those different details, I'm used to those motions in my muscles that
Yeah.
someone who's just starting out for the first time, they're not used to holding something so small and positioning your hand the way I do. And so
Yeah.
what's second nature to me, because I've done it so many times over the years, that's where they're not making that connection. They're not seeing that he has that muscle memory, that he knows what he's doing. His hands are used to that and are just going through
Definitely.
those motions that I'm going to learn over time.
Yeah. even that, like, just knowing where things need to be, where the nose should go, where the eyes should be, the ears,
Mhm,
just you already know that, you know, because you've done so many hundreds or thousands or whatever the case is. So you don't have to second guess. You don't have to put a pencil line. You don't have to think, hey, does that look right? You already know, like you said, you got your head, your chin, you know the eyes are somewhere in the middle. You can already visually understand that. New people, they
mhm,
can't. So it takes a little bit of extra time, and that's perfectly fine. You know, work at your own pace. The speed comes later.
mhm,
I've seen a lot of scary accidents because people wanted to rush things, and
mhm.
you know, all of
My
that can be avoided.
accidents my accidents tend to happen when I'm sitting there going, "Oh, I just wanna do one more cut," and that's the time when I'm gonna slip, and
Yeah,
that's when I'm gonna cut myself. And so, like, I've started to get to the point where I'm like, "Oh, I could do this one. Nope. You know what? I'm gonna put the knife down. I'm gonna look at this again tomorrow, and if I think I need to make that one last cut, then I will, but I don't want to risk it right now."
yeah, yeah. It's a very fine line, when to put it down and stop.
Mhm,
I think, you know, I used to work with a guy who he knew when his day was over when he started dropping things.
mm,
He said he would start, like, his pencil would fall, or he would drop his paintbrush or his tool. He was like, once he started to drop things a couple of times, or like he would pick something up and it wouldn't quite come up with him. He would have to reach for it a couple of times. He said he was done. He knew right then and there to stop whatever he was doing, go home. He
mhm,
would switch to something else. So that kind of stuck with me over the years. Not necessarily dropping things, but there's a time when I'm in my shop working on something or I'm carving
mhm,
where I can kind of feel internally that maybe I'm tired or something's slightly off.
mhm,
And I'm like, okay, maybe now's the time to put everything down because you don't want to hurt yourself or ruin the
mhm.
project.
Yeah, you don't wanna overcarve. You
Yeah.
know, it's also hard to learn that point when you're looking at the piece and you're like, you know what? The piece is done.
Yeah.
And if I keep going, I'm going to overcarve something and it's going to throw proportions out of whack. It's going to go too deep, or I might try to get that next cut in and I'm carving in a different direction and I'm going against the grain, and that's when it's going to split. You get to that point as well where you start to get that sense of, wait, no, this is when the carving's finished.
Yeah. Yeah. And I heard recently, I wish I could remember who said it, and I'm definitely gonna butcher how he said it, but he said, "A carving is never done. You're just done carving."
Mm,
Like, because
I
you
like
can
that.
keep working it. You can keep working it over and over and over again, and as a carver, you'll always find your piece that you're working on. Always, there's a little bit more you could take off here, a detail you can
Hmm.
add there, but sometimes you just need to be done.
Hmm.
And knowing when to stop is really important in a carving.
Yes.
So you carve both wood and golf balls. Do you have a favorite?
Oh, it's changed over the years.
Mhm.
I think right now I'm enjoying uh, kind of like my cottonwood bark phase. You know, I have another Native American face mounted on my workbench that, you know, every now and then I go back to and work on it. Um, I've done a couple bark houses. I've done a couple of the ones I mentioned previously, Wharf that I showed. I think I'm kind of in that cottonwood bark phase. There was a time where I was doing cypress knees, and I did a couple
Mm.
of wood spirits in those. Um, Basswood has always been a go-to for a variety of different
Fan favorite.
carvings. Hmm. Um, but I think there's still a part of my carving heart still with the golf balls. You know,
Interesting.
it's that I had someone once ask me, you know, why, you're the youngest person at this in this club. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you interested? And I said, it's going to save on therapy bills.
Yeah.
I'm going into education. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be stressed. Life's going to throw curveballs at you. I find carving to be my therapy. And
Mhm.
so those golf ball projects being those quick ones that I can put a lot of focus into for a short amount of time. I don't have to spend hours on it, but for a short amount of time, I could put a lot of focus into it. And when I'm finished, I've got a completed piece that's ready for display. That's going to save on therapy. A normal therapist visit, you're sitting there for an hour talking about whatever's going on. In an hour, I can walk away with something that I've completed, and it's taken my mind off of everything else that's stressing me out. And I'm going to now feel very relaxed after I'm finished. So those golf balls save me from therapy bills.
That's awesome. The golf balls are great and the carvings are great. Everything you do is you could see the attention to detail, and the thought and the care that goes into each piece. It's very apparent.
But I do want to go back and make sure I also have that shelf on my workbench of carvings that aren't complete, that aren't great.
Yep. Of
I'm 30 years into carving. I still don't know everything I need to know for how to carve.
course.
And, I'm I'm hesitant to take that compliment of great. I have a few great pieces, but I'm still learning, and that shelf will attest to that I'm still learning.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, there's always room to grow,
Hmm.
always things to learn, and I doing these interviews with people, and hearing their stories has given me like a newfound passion for the craft
Hmm.
because everyone has their own unique story with wood carving, how they got started and the mediums they use and the tools they use and just the thought process behind how they go about their carvings is just incredible to
Hmm.
hear. And it's definitely inspired me to want to learn a lot more about um, carving in general. The history and the different types of wood and the different types of tools. And I kind of want to explore different styles because
Hmm.
I'm a little bit of a chameleon with carving. I do a lot of the characters type
Hmm.
stuff and the gnomes and the pumpkins and the things like that, and but I really am interested in wanting to do, the realistic stuff, like the Native American that you did and, the female figure.
Actually, I think that would
Um
be my biggest tip for your audience is when I was in that wood carving club growing up, we had a lot of members who were, this gentleman is strictly a bird carver. That is all he
Yeah.
carves are birds. And this carver only does fish. And this carver only does characterized Santas. And I think over the years, doing many different types of projects, I've noticed how that has benefited me. When I started doing the realistic faces, that got me focused on wrinkles and,
Mhm.
wrinkles in the corners of the eyes, wrinkles in the forehead, wrinkles around the mouth. And I started to then bring that to the golf balls. And I thought my faces became more expressive and looked so much better because it started to have those little extra details in that piece. Because before I would just do the eyes, the eyebrows, the mouth, and I ain't worry about wrinkles. I ain't put wrinkles in because I ain't really
Yeah,
think about them. But
yeah.
the fact that I had that experience of doing realistic faces, I then thought, these faces do need wrinkles. And so by having those variety of projects, keeping yourself always pivoting
Mhm.
kind of helps you learn more along the way.
That's why I kinda wanna do that and just learn as much as I can. I'm also really want to do the animal type
Mm.
carvings, more realistic animals, because I've done
I've
some
I've done a
characterized
couple.
versions. Yeah. I love bears. So my main bucket
Oh,
list
nice.
is a bear.
Mhm,
I want to do like a big, I say big, but to me it's like right around here
mhm,
size. I want to do like a grizzly bear or a black bear or something along those lines. I've done a larger owl, I've done pumpkin and
mhm.
did another one. I can't remember. But
I
yeah,
I've done a
I've been working on the series of
mhm. I've done
larger
a
ones.
barred owl. I've done a eastern box turtle, and then you mentioned bear. Mine has always been a wolf, and so I've
Okay.
done a wolf's head. Um, did that out of a block of basswood, and then I sunk it into a piece of driftwood. And because I painted it to be more of a whitish wolf, it worked with the bleach of the driftwood. It had the driftwood has that bleached white effect, and the wolf looks like it's
Really
literally
cool.
coming out of that piece. And um, doing animals realistic, there's so much detail with those. Like,
Yeah.
and I never realized how much detail was involved. Not just the carving, but then the wood burning. Even the box turtle, I had to wood burn all the lines on the shell so that
Yeah.
each one kind of had that layered effect that a box turtle has, doing the fur lines, the feathers, and then the layers upon layers of painting to kind of give that blended effect. There's just so much that goes into there that I never realized that until I first started doing those.
Yeah. And then for me it's the anatomy of it.
Hmm.
Just getting like the arm right, or like you mentioned the turtle. I just saw this on another sculptor's YouTube channel, BM Sculptures. He
Mm,
carved a turtle, and I didn't realize that the back of the turtle shell has 13 like squares or whatever the shell
mm,
is. Each
hmm,
section, every single turtle has 13.
hmm,
I didn't know that. I would have just drawn it on and crisscrossed it however it would be, and I feel like a small detail like that would not knowing that detail and adding 16 or 17 squares on the back would make the turtle look not like a turtle.
hmm.
Um, but yeah, so it's those kinds of things that would trip me up, is the anatomy and the detail, like you said. I spoke to another carver, and he talked about when he first got involved. He wanted to carve bird decoys for hunting.
Mm,
He said that
mhm,
was his own realm. Jonathan Creason, uh, actually, he said but he said when he got into it, the guys that would carve those sculptures, they were so real picky about like, no, this bird has 3 feathers here and has that many
mhm,
lines and this many lines. But he was like, that's part of that world of carving. They get stuck in that realm, which I can understand.
mhm.
You stick
Yeah.
to one medium, that's great.
There's actually a,
But
a a great carving show in Maryland. It's the I want to say Ward, WARD. It's like a an international uh, carving show and competition for realistic animal carvings. They
oh,
do a
cool.
lot
I have to
of
check that out.
birds, a lot of fish carvings, and then sometimes you'll see like turtles and reptiles and other things like that. But the detail and just how realistic it looks. They do painstaking research to make sure that, they're getting the correct feather colors and number of feathers and, making sure that everything looks as realistic as can be. And not just with the carving of the bird, but also the full display, making
Yeah,
sure that, the fauna and insects and whatnot that are there are also what
incredible.
you would find in that habitat.
That's wild. Yeah, I mean, that must take hundreds of hours. I
easily.
mean, that's easily. I mean, to get the ants and the bugs and stuff in there too is just really incredible. I'll have to check that out. That sounds really cool. I've always wanted to try cottonwood bark. Um, I only have really access to basswood and some,
Mhm,
domestic stuff, maple and walnut, which I'm not going to carve with hand tools. Um, but yeah, cottonwood bark is something I've really wanted to try my hand at. Unfortunately, for some reason, I've never ordered some. I don't really know what I'm looking for
mhm.
when it comes to cottonwood bark, and online the pictures are a little
It
hard
can
to
be deceiving.
tell,
Mhm.
and the prices seem a little steep. Um, and there's nowhere locally I can go and pick them up, at least that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, far as I'm aware, I know, like, when I did the class with Alec, he talked about how he has traveled out to Western United States, and he has gone foraging for cottonwood bark because, um, to get it, you have to find it shed. It's already shedded from the tree. The
Hmm.
bark has to be laying on the ground, and, if you're not getting it right away, it's being exposed to the elements, and, it can be very difficult to find great pieces that
Yeah.
aren't, going to be difficult for you to carve.
Yeah, because I've heard some horror stories of people buying cottonwood bark and they get it and it's completely disintegrated.
Mhm,
I guess it's rotten, or maybe there's a lot of weird stuff going on with it. Maybe it was overpriced. Yeah. So I've always been a little skeptical about buying it. I think if I found like a pretty reputable source,
mhm,
I'd give it a shot. But unfortunately, I don't know any
mhm,
sources for it. And I've never really put much effort into looking out for it. But
mhm.
I would definitely like to try that. I've heard good things about it. It looks real easy to carve compared to basswood.
It's a
Very
little
brittle
deceiving.
looking.
It's a little deceiving, um,
Yeah.
because it can be brittle. As you're working it with a knife, as you're working it with, different, gouges, it can flake off very easily.
Yeah,
Um,
I've seen that
and
in
so
the
you have to be
videos.
very attentive to the grain pattern and making sure you're carving with the grain, um, because it can change very quickly on you. The direction of the grain can
Yeah.
change, and it can be very easy for it to just start to split on you.
Mm.
And then with those compared to my golf balls, I don't do any sanding on golf balls. You don't want to do any sanding. You don't want to do any power carving with a golf ball because the
Okay.
the dust can be toxic. That
All right.
resin material, breathing that in can be toxic. So I don't do any sanding. But cottonwood bark, you have to sand for, especially for the
I was gonna
realistic
say you kind of
faces.
have to sand it. You want that
Yes.
smooth look texture because there's something about cottonwood bark. When carving a realistic face, it really holds the features well.
Hmm.
Um, basswood, I don't know, maybe it's too soft, or when you go to finish it with something, maybe it absorbs the oil and it kind of expands a little bit, and you kind of lose some of those features a
Hmm.
little bit. Whereas the cottonwood, also the color of the cottonwood, just really
Yes.
accentuates, the shadow lines and everything else. It just works really, really well, and I love seeing all those realistic carvings of in the cottonwood, and I love those little houses, those fairy
Hmm.
gnome houses. Those are really cool.
And those can be fun too because with those you don't want symmetry.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
you're doing that roof pattern, you don't want all the lines to be straight, and you don't want all of um shingles to be the same width. Like, you want that variety because that's what's going to give it that whimsical
Yeah.
look to it, and it's not going to look natural if you're looking at it and everything is nice and straight lines. So
Yeah,
I
and that's
find
what I
that
love about them, those whimsical aspect of it.
there's a lot of leeway in carving those type of houses where you can, have windows angled differently, and, door frames that are misproportioned, and, it lends itself to natural mistakes while carving are hidden in the final product, because you do want it to kind of have that movement to it.
Those are really cool. It's one of the main reasons why I wanted to get cottonwood bark was to try one of those houses because
Mhm.
I feel like attempting the realistic face. I don't want to ruin a piece of cottonwood on a first try. Where it's the
Mhm.
whimsical houses, you can mess it up and just say, "Hey, it's part of how it looks," and
Mhm.
kinda go with the flow of it, and I feel like it's a good starter project for that. Yeah, one day I'll get a piece of cottonwood and I'll try it, maybe soon. Now that we're talking about it, I'm gonna feel driven to look it up and buy a few expensive pieces of bark. Yeah, so, um where can everyone find your work if they wanna see what you
The
do or
easiest
if they
way
wanna
is
buy
to
something?
uh right now I don't really, I have an Etsy presence, but I haven't put anything in the shop in a while. I don't typically carve to sell things, mainly because you put all that time, that thought, that effort into a piece that it's hard to part with it. Golf balls, it's a little bit easier for me to part with. So, when I've displaying, I've had some people purchase them from me, but the wood carvings, those are very hard to say goodbye to. So
Yeah,
I don't typically
understand.
sell those, but the easiest way to find me is on Instagram. I'm goofballs underscore by underscore Dan.
Really cool. The website or anything like that?
No, I haven't. You would think with me and my background in technology and education, I could whip a website together. I just haven't put the time together to do that. Um,
Yeah,
I
sure.
have done a couple videos up on YouTube. Um, like we said earlier, I've had feedback that, some of my videos, I speed up different areas
Yeah.
of the process,
You
and
have
people
to.
have complained.
Yeah,
And all right, do you want me to put an hour and a half video on YouTube so that you see every step along the way? Or can I speed up different portions of the video so that it's now a 10-minute video so people have the understanding of the process?
absolutely.
I kind of
Yeah, I
have
mean,
that fine line.
you need people to watch it too, so a
Hmm.
2-hour long video, no one's gonna watch.
Yeah.
They'll see the time and say, "Alright." Yeah, it's one of those fine balancing act, which I feel like Doug Linker has
Yes.
perfected. I mean, his videos are absolutely incredible. There's a couple others out there. Johnny Layton's
Hmm.
videos are really
Hmm.
good. Um, yeah, so there are videos out there that walk that line really well. Um, but it's hard. It's hard.
Yes.
I've put out
Yes, it is.
some of my own videos, and they're sped up like 100 times, and they're not really instructional. They're just me doing it.
Hmm.
And I've had comments. It's too fast. Okay. Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, cool. I mean, I'll link all of your social media stuff in the description of the podcast and the video, and yeah, so people can find your work, and they definitely won't be disappointed when they see what you do.
Well, thank
You're
you.
very talented, and I'm a big fan, and I'm gonna get a couple of golf balls and
Well,
try my
make sure you
hand.
send me that address so I can
I
send them out to
I
you.
definitely will, and I'll send you something back in return. Dan, thank you again for coming on the show. It was great talking with you and hearing more about the story behind Goofballs by Dan and the creativity that goes into your work. And to everyone listening, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow or subscribe to the Modern Woodcarver podcast. If you like to check out more of Dan's work, be sure to look up Goofballs by Dan and see the incredible characters he's created. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.